Well, first practice in Miami for the Dogs. Trying to wrap up the day. We thought we were going to be able to see practice earlier. College football playoff intervened and let the schools decide, and the schools basically said that there will be no practice viewing, which is strange, but I'm not going to focus on that. Georgia apparently did have a pretty good practice today, from all I can tell. There's been a lot of discussion about um, injuries, I guess, or missing players. Missing players is harder to figure out because obviously we're not there. I have not seen any reports of things. I do expect at some point here this week, soon, I don't know when, for JT Daniels and George Pickens to be in town. Obviously, the CDC lowered its guidelines this afternoon as it relates to the procedure. I just kicked the table. We're not in our home field here. So that's one thing. But I expect those guys to be able to play. When they'll get to Miami area is a good question. Um, and I think that's an important question too. Um, how important George Pickens is and can be for the Dogs. Um, it's is very. I mean, he is an important player for Georgia. He's the type of player that Michigan would have a hard time dealing with. I mean, I think they could bottle up Zamir and James. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I think they can do that. I think with George out there, it becomes more difficult. I think that he is the type of player that just, you know, very few teams in college football have dynamic receivers. Alabama has them. Georgia has George for sure. Maybe Burton as well. But I mean, George is a different type of receiver, and I also think he brings a lot of what's the right word? A passion, I guess, for what he does, and he's worked hard to get where he's at. There's a lot. The money's on the table for George. He certainly could leave and go to the NFL after this game. I mean, if Georgia loses. So, but I thought, today I went out and ran. I didn't think it was overly hot by any stretch. Lower 80s, I said early 80s. So not bad. Not a lot of sweating. Not very humid. I do not think it's going to take Michigan forever to get used to being in Miami. Um, I'm not sure I buy that. I do think it could slow them down in terms of how they acclimate. Well, what I said earlier, what I'm trying to say exactly is their acclimation. I think by Friday they'll be okay. The question is, will the time it took them to get acclimated delay other stuff? It could. I'm not sure I really buy that in a big way. So we'll get the offensive players tomorrow in the morning. So I expect Stetson, James, because it's his hometown, Jamari, probably John Fitzpatrick. I don't know who else, but probably a lineman. But Georgia, it's go time. I think that today how it was a good practice. We wrote about this a lot at Dog Post. Make sure you're clicking that link down there below um, to read everything. But I, that they had what at least some people who were at practice felt was a good practice is a good sign. Practices are extremely important. We're not doing the Allen Iverson thing. We're 5 days from them playing in the semifinals of college football's playoff. It's important right now. Is it important against Charleston Southern? No, but you don't ever get practice time back. I mean, you're limited with the amount of practice time you have because of NCAA bylaws. It's important to do things the right way at that moment. So, you know, by all reports out there, JT Daniels was not practicing today, or at least he's been in COVID protocol. Was he at practice? We don't know. I know I don't. I can't say affirmatively that he was, but there's been plenty of speculation that JT will be in town. Well, I fully expect him to be here by the time Georgia plays. The question is, will he have enough practice to be ready? He's just going to have to be ready. I mean, he's the backup quarterback. He's got to be ready to go. And, it could be that he's the backup quarterback for this game, and that's it. So we Michigan has a little bit of the similar situation in that their starting quarterback has been a really solid player for them, but their fan base is really in love with a high-rated prospect who's not played or who's not started this year. So both of these guys have a chip on their shoulder. One thing that Kirk Herbstreit was talking about today was Georgia's secondary, and that Dan Mullen told him that that was the one question about Georgia was their secondary, and that that really was taken advantage of by elite players from Alabama and Bryce Young and those two receivers, one of whom will not be playing this playoff. So that could hurt Alabama as time goes on. But one SEC coach told me, they got guys that just sort of manufacture big plays out of nothing. I mean, like they have other guys that can come in and play and be very good for them. So I don't think anybody's feeling sorry for Alabama. That's another thing in this stream of consciousness. There were a lot of questions today, specifically from the national media, about Alabama for Georgia. And I think for the Dogs, and I know for me, we're past Christmas, and they lost that game in a decisive fashion, obviously. But that game's gone. Like they're not replaying that game. It's done. Alabama won it, and it's great for Alabama. But Alabama's not won the national championship. That was for the SEC championship, and Georgia's not playing Alabama this week. And I know those of us in the media certainly get fixated on a shiny object, and we do this in life. I mean, guys and girls get obsessed with the opposite sex or whoever they're dating. I mean, it's part of life. But um, to me, it's probably time for it's past time for the team to have changed its focus onto other things. In talking to the players today, trying to give y'all a better zoom. Oh well. Um, they certainly were fatigued. Is probably the is probably the best way to put it. Fatigued of the discussion of the Alabama game, and I know just for me, it's been a long time. I mean, it's the time is one thing. It's just that they haven't played. They would have played two or three other games by the time now. By now, we would have forgotten it, for lack of a better. I mean, no one's talking about Texas A&M beating Alabama, at least not very much. So we're always prisoners of the moment. But I think the biggest thing that I drew from today, and I would encourage you to read the article below, um, is that Georgia had a solid practice. I don't know that we know a ton more. Obviously we weren't there. I wasn't there, and the people that get to tell you kind of what's going on, um, we're not able to convey that to our sizable audiences. And I really, I'll say this, I don't get too bent out of shape about this stuff, but my audience is special to me. I don't lie to y'all. I tell you straight, like for instance, Stetson's going to start in this game. I don't see how, I do not think he will not start. But JT Daniels better be ready to go. I mean, JT Daniels isn't so far behind Stetson that they wouldn't, change the quarterback if they were down double digits in this game. Okay. Um, but there's been a lot of support inside the program and from former players, frankly, who are Stetson guys. And I'm not specifically talking about Aaron Murray. I mean just people. So, and the other thing about this, and this is another topic that's been sort of over discussed, but if it were so obvious that JT should be the starter, JT would be the starter. I learned a long time ago that coaches don't purposely try to put players out there that are not the better player, that are not better for the team. Is JT better, more physically gifted? He is throwing. He's not running, and that's one thing to me with Stetson that's got to get better. Is lately um, he's not been as dynamic with his feet, whether it was the Tech game or the Alabama game. So I think that's something that really was impressive to me about him in the Tennessee game, the Arkansas game, Florida game. He did not play well against the Gators and Alabama. And Stetson needs to play well for Georgia to win. JT Daniels would need to play well for Georgia to win. JT Daniels did not play well, I didn't think, against Clemson. He played okay. He did not play great against Cincinnati, but he had great numbers. You can't throw an interception in the end zone. So Georgia has a lot of players, and it's not just going to be won by any one player. Here's a text from a former player saying, um, "Football is such a great sport because it's not basketball, which is deeply offensive to some of us." And goes on to say, "Okay, so football is a great sport because it's not basketball because good teams beat great players." I don't know beyond the one player from Michigan who is a great player at Michigan. I think they're similar to the Georgia in that there's not really a star. And, I think Georgia as a team is going to have to beat Michigan. We're going to see if they can do it. That's going to be on Friday. Make sure you go over to dogpost.com. We'll see you over on the website. Thanks for watching. Click the article below.